So, the question that I asked inside Ask an Expert was about reaching out to my ex in order to finish the unfinished business that we had. Now, in other videos, I comment a little bit about this, but just to summarize, we had just like a few things, like very punctual things to take care of, and they were all practical. It didn't have anything to do with, having difficult conversations, or it didn't have like any emotional connotations. They were just things that had to be done. And but even if those conversations and this contact that I wanted to make with my ex wasn't to talk about emotions, it felt very emotional to get in touch with them, and it felt very emotional to um, I guess finish up everything that we still had to do together, because that would mean like a definite end. But at one point, because I was going through Love Addicts and because I was starting to get a new perspective, I was starting to feel a little bit better about myself and the whole situation, but also like having a bunch of realizations that had to do with, wow, like this relationship that I'm coming out of really wasn't that great. And it like I deserve and I want to be in something that is a little bit more me, and like be in a relationship that gets a lot more of my needs met than in comparison to this past relationship. So I was like starting to, I guess, instead of being in the previous state where I went from guilt to blame, but I was still like holding on very tight, and I was only remembering like the good parts of the relationship. At this point, when I asked this question about getting in touch with them to like maybe resolve all of this, I was shifting into a like, okay, maybe like I made a lot of mistakes and they made a lot of mistakes, but like it wasn't a good relationship to be in. Like that was the bottom line. So I was like kind of starting to get ready to like get closure on it. But I was still very early on in the program. I was only a few weeks in. So I asked this question, like, should I get in touch with them? Should I get all these things resolved? And then in the process, like maybe should I apologize because I was like a little rude with them, or like very rude with them like the last time I spoke to them. And then I mentioned like, oh, but I also like, if I'm apologizing, that I would also like them to apologize. So like would I like make it clear to them? Because like I didn't want to, the one thing that I knew is that I didn't want to go into this wanting to resolve things and wanting to apologize, only to come out of it even more hurt and more frustrated when I was just getting over like the most acute um like hurt and frustration that I had. So I write this big post and I explain the whole situation, and then I get an answer. And as always, like when you ask a question inside Love Addicts, but like especially inside Ask an Expert, you have either a psychologist or a coach get back to you, and they will never tell you what to do exactly because they can't, right? Like at the end of the day, it's your decision how to live your life, and you have to both take responsibility for your actions, but also um, know yourself and your situation well enough to realize that you're the one in it. So you're the only one that can make the best decision about the next course of action. But obviously, it's nice to go in there and ask a question. So when you're making the decision of whether to do something or not do it, like say something or not say it, at least you're going into it with more information and a bit more support. And the answer that I got, and I was even like afraid of it because like I thought that this unfinished business that I had with my ex was something, it was something that made me feel a lot of shame, um, because I felt like it was up to me to resolve it. And the fact that I hadn't resolved it up to that point made me like a really, really bad person. And I almost thought that at that point they were going to say, like, oh, like what you're doing is not nice, like, yes, get in touch with them and resolve this right away. But instead, like, I got a really long, detailed answer. And it asked me to journal, it asked me to think about my motivations for getting in touch with this person. But the main part of it was just like, really, really, and truly look at yourself and look at your feelings, because feelings change and emotions change, and sometimes they can change on a daily basis. And I guess at that point, even though I had like a roller coaster of emotions, I hadn't yet like consciously thought about like how ideas and thoughts and feelings and emotions that maybe I had like in the morning would no longer feel good in the afternoon. And anything that I, maybe did today, I could end up feeling better, regretting 1 or 2 weeks later. Because when you are in the middle of healing, you change so much and you shift so much. And you can have some days where you feel absolutely amazing because you're feeling so miserable. And then all of a sudden you're getting like support and information that makes you feel great. So you're like, oh my God, now I can go and like conquer the world. But then 2 days later, you might be like, oh, like I'm exhausted, I burnt out, I don't feel so good, or maybe something I did didn't quite go my way, because you're having all these new insights and you're having all of this mind opening experiences, and you have a community where you can get support and ask questions. So your mind is just like just opening up, and your heart is just opening up with it. But the other people in your life and the people that you're interacting with are not going through the program. They are not receiving the insights that you are. And it means that once you go out into the world with like all your new knowledge, you need to be very, very patient with the people that you're interacting with, because they're going to be on a different page, and they're not going to be looking at situations, probably not be looking at situations in the positive light that you are looking um, at the situation in, because they haven't had the support and the insight and the wonderful conversations and therapy sessions that you're having, right? So at that point, so I got this very detailed answer where they gave me exercises like to really look within. And first of all, I realized that my motivations weren't the best motivations that I could have. Like, even though like I felt like I was ready for closure, I found that I still had like a little bit of hope that I was going to get in touch with this person, and they would have gone through a shift as well, in their own way, through their own means. But like, I was hoping that at the very worst, I would finish everything that I had to do with them and then just like get closure. And at the very best, that they would be like, oh, I've also been thinking about things, or, oh, I've also been getting advice, and, like, I'm sorry for this and that. And, like, I kind of hoped like we would have like this really open, mature conversation, or where we both like kind of like took responsibility for everything that happened. And so, like, when I did all the exercises in the answer that they gave me inside Ask an Expert, and realized that, like, part of my motivation was that I couldn't get closure just from like resolving the unfinished business, that I also needed closure from having like not only a conversation with this person, but a conversation with this person where they would meet me at a level of like maturity and compassion that I myself wasn't even hadn't even been capable of like a couple weeks ago. And now I felt like I was capable of that. And I was hoping that they would have somehow reached the same level. But the truth is that I wasn't in contact with them. So I had no idea like what they were doing, what they were thinking, how they would respond to me. and if they would be ready to have a conversation where, we both found, closure through taking responsibility for things and through going over what happened, but like in a more neutral state. Anyways, when I realized that through all the exercises, that though like that was my true motivation, and that's what I really needed at that point to get closure, I also realized that if I didn't get that and I was met with any form of like hostility, that I would be very triggered by that. I would be very hurt. I would be very frustrated and possibly, very likely, not react in the best way. And that I would probably end up feeling so angry and so frustrated that I would then not go through with finishing this unfinished business. And it would probably take us to an even more chaotic, um, like ending, or like chaotic situation that we were in at the moment, because like at the moment we weren't speaking, so like in a way everything was okay. But I was like, okay, like I can, like, I am not healed yet, so I have like the potential to make a bad situation even worse. um and getting very, very hurt in the process, which means like, and at that point, like I had already gotten hurt so many times in this relationship, and even after the relationship ended, I was already feeling so tired and so, like, not depressed like in the sense of like having depression, but like when you're feeling depressed because something unpleasant happened, so you're like, this that was already interfering with my life. It was already interfering with my day to day, that like so many days I felt really low, so many days I felt really sad, so many days I felt angry. And then I was like, oh my god, if I add any more pain and hurt to what I'm already feeling, I'm going to be feeling even more low, and I'm going to be even more distracted from things that I should actually be doing. And I'm going to be even slower at moving on with other areas of my life. Like not necessarily moving on from the person or from the relationship, but it's like there are things in my life that I need to get done. And like I do not want to be distracted from that. So that to me was a game changer, because I realized that there was no right and wrong answer, but there was a right answer for me and my moments. And I had already been trying to like put myself first and prioritize myself like a bunch of times. And like a bunch of the fights that I had had with this person was because I was trying to do right by me and I was trying to prioritize myself. And I was about to prioritize them and their needs over mine once again, because I wasn't quite ready to reach out. But that, like, it just bugged me so much that we had this unfinished business. I was like, oh, I'm being so irresponsible because I'm not taking care of this. And eventually I said, well, okay, this is not great. I wish there was another solution. I wish I could actually be more responsible and like take care of that, but I need to take care of me first. So that question, the answer that I got to that question, like, was really a game changer for me, because from that moment on I realized that I need to prioritize myself in order to have the energy to eventually do what needs to be done. And the fact that at that moment I didn't have the strength to do it was because I had prioritized them so many times that I was completely depleted. And I was like, well, there's no point of like doing this to myself again. And this is the even though it's not like the ideal situation, because I would much rather just take care of things, this is the moment that I make a life shift, because this is not an easy decision to make. This is not an easy thing to let go of. Like, I eventually decided not to reach out to them, to take care of myself and take care of my feelings. And that took me like a little over 6 months. So in the end, I didn't reach out to this person and I didn't resolve those situations for like nearly 7, 8 months. And obviously that has consequences. Like this wasn't very serious, so it didn't have any like terrible consequences. And like obviously if it is something more urgent, you just kind of like take care of it. But I wasn't in this case it wasn't the situation that was urgent. What made it feel urgent was my anxious attachment, was that anxiety push that makes you do things, resolve things, a lot of the times at the cost of your own well-being. So that was a really hard decision to make, but with all the exercises that they gave me and all of like the thought processes that I went through because of them, I was like, okay, me first, this changes now. And thankfully, I have never gone back on that. And even when I did eventually resolve the situation, I made sure that I did it from a place of self care where I was pacing myself and where I was getting my needs as well as providing for the needs of someone else and, like just resolving what needed to be done. So yeah, so that was really amazing. I love the Ask an Expert section inside of Love Addicts. And I asked many, many other questions after that. And I just continue to think that it is so valuable to have a place where I can go at any time of day or night, because obviously this is online. So it's like 24 hours. I can just go in there and say, this is happening to me. This is my very, very, very specific situation. These are all the thoughts that I'm having about it. This is like all the conflicting emotions that I have about it. These are all the possible solutions that I thought of. And I don't know what course of action to take. Like, help me. And they will get back to you within 24 hours, which I think is incredibly fast. And their answers tend to be very long and very to the point and very strategic. And again, like they'll never tell you what to do, but they will show you ways of making the best decision possible. So I am so grateful for Love Addicts and I love Ask an Expert. And most importantly, I realized that because you're going through a healing journey, you change your mind so much and your emotions change so much that it is better to leave certain decisions, or at least in my experience, this was better. It was like certain things that were on my mind that I wanted to do, but that were risky emotionally. It was better to leave it for later when I had consolidated the healing a bit more. Like, there's so much work to be done, because you're talking inside the community, you're using Ask an Expert, you're going through the courses, but most importantly, like you're going out in life and just living. And even if you're not in a romantic relationship, you are in many other relationships. And you're always dealing with other human beings and their needs and your needs, and how do we compromise and how do we balance. And that time of studying the material, of thinking about it, of journaling, of going out and like applying this within, professional relationships and friendships. It really, that is where the growth happens. And that's where I feel now when I look back, like months ago, like who I was and who I am now, I can see the shift into me being a more conscious and mature person. I still feel at this point like the pain of anxious attachment, and I still see how anxious attachment continues to influence a lot of the things that I feel and think. But at this point, I'm like, I question those feelings and I question those thoughts. And I take time for myself, because what I really learned asking this question was just like, take time, to like understand where you are. And in that taking time, you change your mind a lot of times. So this is one of the things, like for me, a big thing and a big way in which anxious attachment manifests it, that is that it makes me change my mind a lot. And sometimes nothing is happening and I'm just changing my mind because I'm having a positive thought and then a negative thought, and then I'll start making decisions based on those thoughts. And if I'm having a positive thought, then I'm like, oh great, I'm going to go do this. And if I'm having a negative thought, then I'm like, oh, I'm never going to talk to this person again. And but then I noticed that I can change my mind within the same day, within the same week, without anything external happening. But when something external is happening, so when someone else is giving me input and participating in a situation, then I'll change my mind even more. But now I see that the difference is that when I take time, and sometimes I need a little bit of time, sometimes I need a lot of time, but when I take time to be with my feelings and my thoughts, and also when I take time where I can do things that are good for me, so like stick to my routine and continue working on my projects and do things that bring me joy while I'm still processing those feelings. It means that I go through all of those motions of changing my mind 1,000 times, but eventually I get to a very settled place where I know exactly what I want, exactly what I need, and exactly what my limits and boundaries are, and how far I'm willing to go for something. And then after I make decisions from that very settled, stable place, then even if things don't go my way, I might be upset, but like I'm not like super upset. I'm just like, oh, okay, like that didn't work, that didn't go my way, but I'm so sure of myself, and I know so well who I am, that I'm like, well, it didn't work this time, but it might work a next time around. And I might like, oh, I'm sad because this didn't work, but I know like the sadness will pass. So I still feel negative emotions when things don't go my way, but because I made decisions and I took action from such a settled and true place, my then negative emotions aren't extreme, and I can handle them and I can talk to them and I can settle in with them and just like let them be until they're ready to pass. As where before, like when I made decisions from an inconsistent place and from um, a place from which I hadn't processed things, then things wouldn't go my way. And then I would have like really explosive negative emotions. And then I would react and I would constantly just make situations even worse. So, um, again, like asking this question made me realize that like a lot of times there aren't like right answers and wrong answers, but there's always the answer of like, have I processed? Like, have I gone through my process? Am I making a decision from a place that is calm and settled? And from a place where I know where I'm coming from and I know who I am, that even if things don't go my way, I will be okay. Am I like ready? Am I supported? Am I giving myself everything that I need? Like, am I in a good moment? Like, is this a calm week? Am I sticking to my routine and feeling really great? Like, am I keeping up with my work and my projects and whatever I have in my life, that like I feel very good about other areas of my life? And then I can process these feelings and make the best decision. Or maybe I'm neglecting other areas of my life, not in a good place at all, then I make a decision, I make something worse, then it doesn't go my way, and then I have all these negative emotions, and on top of everything, I am not taking care of myself, And I've because I've neglected other areas of my life, then I'm also feeling bad about like all of these other things, and then it just feels like it's an avalanche, and you feel terrible, and you might think that you feel terrible about that one situation, but you're actually feeling terrible about 100 other things. So yes, so asking this with inside Ask an Expert really changed everything for me, because I actually realized that I wasn't ready, and I gave myself months through to work through things, which hopefully I won't always need months, but at this point that's like what I needed. And now looking back, I can see that the time and the space that I gave myself is what made a difference. Time and space can be healing. Obviously, it's very easy to also go to an extreme and get too much time and space and then stop living life. So I never want to be a person doing that. But I understood that time and space to process and to take care of myself puts me in a better position to handle difficult situations a lot better, and also not give too much of myself, and also not get back into certain situations because of nostalgia, or because I'm missing someone. Like, time and space gives you a lot of perspective. And I think that time would have been a lot shorter if the other person had reached out to me, because one of the things that I was processing was how much effort I used to put in the relationship versus how little effort they put in, and how much I tried versus how little they tried, and how much I was always trying to like make things better and apologize versus how little they tried all those things. So I think also like I took all of that time because I didn't feel that there was a willingness from the other side, from the other person, to come together and resolve this in the best way possible. Um, but I definitely now incorporated this into like my toolbox, which is like, as much as I feel the anxiety and I want to resolve things right away, I now give myself time, and that has been invaluable. See you on the next video.